This is Fox News Alert. We are following several major breaking stories this Friday night. Now, I know so many of you have been very frustrated, so have I, with our system of justice. We watched, let's see, Mueller's witch hunt. That's been playing out for 2 years, day after day. A lot of people's lives have been ruined over, quote, process crimes just because of their connection to President Trump. And I know you've been saying to yourself, well, what about all of the people that we know have been abusing power, committing real and serious crimes? Hillary Clinton's one. We look at people like McCabe and Comey and Strzok and Page and many, many more. What about the FISA abuses, stripping Americans of their constitutional rights? What about the rampant conflicts of interest at some of the highest levels at the DOJ, FBI? Tonight, we have great news. According to my sources, everything that we have been revealing about the deep state for 2 years will very soon result in major, serious ramifications. We're going to have a complete breakdown of all of this coming up. All right, but first, just breaking a couple hours ago, Jussie Smollett has been indicted on 16 felony counts for allegedly orchestrating an elaborate, poorly executed hate crime hoax. If found guilty, he could face major prison time. We're going to have more on this breaking news throughout the show. Also coming up tonight, we have big breaking news surrounding House Intel chair, known liar, and known collaborator in collusion himself involved in Adam Schiff and his brand new best friend, Michael Cohen. Serious charges tonight being made about Adam Schiff. Plus, new developments in the Democrats' scary new wave of anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate. We have a Hannity expose on crazy Uncle Joe Biden. But we begin tonight, breaking news out of our Hannity Watch on the Deep State. What we're about to show you, this is only the beginning. Buckle up. Thanks to a surprise move by one very brave House Republican, we now have damning evidence surrounding the corrupt, unethical, dishonest actions of so many deep state actors over the past 3 years. The congressman is from Georgia. His name is Doug Collins, and he released the full transcript of Bruce Orr's deposition, and its contents are shocking. By the way, there's going to be a cascade of these depositions being released. Now, the deep state house of cards, mark my words, it is beginning to tumble down. To give you some background, keep in mind, Bruce Orr was once the fourth highest ranking member of Obama's Department of Justice. He became a conduit for the federal government's Russia collusion investigation. Remember, his wife, Nellie, actually worked for Christopher Steele. She was working at Fusion GPS on the Clinton bought and paid for anti-Trump dossier and used her husband's position to proliferate the dossier's contents throughout the highest levels of government. That's contained in this deposition. And according to Orr's testimony, which is now completely public, Bruce Orr passed along a thumb drive from his wife to the FBI so that Trump haters like Strzok and Page could have direct access to Hillary Clinton's op research. And we also learned that both the FBI and the Clinton campaign, via Fusion GPS, they were both paying Christopher Steele for this so-called intelligence. And we know that Steele was being paid by a Russian oligarch. We've talked about him, Oleg Deripaska, who had a grievance against Paul Manafort over a business deal gone wrong. Let me recap this so you have to understand this. Steele was getting paid by your FBI, Hillary Clinton, and the DNC, and a Russian oligarch. Pretty good gig if you can get it, but that's not all. Thanks to this transcript, we now know that Bruce Orr testified under oath about meeting with Fusion GPS founder and Christopher Steele's boss, Glenn Simpson. Now, this occurred during the 2016 campaign. Now, Simpson, he testified that he didn't meet with Bruce Orr until after the election. Question is, which one of these two guys is lying? Now, we also learned from this deposition that Orr testified he notified the FBI about his contacts with Christopher Steele also during the 2016 election. But according to a statement from Adam Schiff, who I think is the biggest liar in Congress, he claims that Bruce Orr did not tell the FBI about his contacts with Steele again until after the election. Here we are again. Which one is lying? My money's on Schiff. Now, here's where it gets really important. Bruce Orr also testifies that he notified the FBI of the dossier's extremely biased source and Christopher Steele's personal mission to stop Trump, a big Trump hater. On page 15 of the October 2016 FISA application against Carter Page, it reads the following. The FBI was unaware of any derogatory information pertaining to Christopher Steele. That's right. The problem is everybody in the FBI knew in August of 2016 the dossier was tainted, that Hillary paid for it, the DNC paid for it, Comey, McCabe. He even briefed Andrew Weissman, who's Mueller's pit bull, about this bias. So literally, the special counsel's office has been long aware of the biased origins of the fake, phony Clinton, DNC, and apparently FBI and Russian oligarch payments to Christopher Steele. This is hugely important, a detail never provided to the FISA court. That's called the conspiracy to commit fraud on a court, to spy on a Trump campaign associate, denying that person his constitutional rights, and this being done at the height of the 2016 election. So in other words, they have purposely withheld to the FISA court, conspiracy to commit fraud, plain and simple, information that was so relevant, and it became the bulk of the FISA application. Now, it doesn't end there. Christopher Steele testified under oath in Great Britain under the threat of perjury. I don't know if any of this dossier is true, maybe 50-50, it was just raw intelligence. In other words, the author of the dossier doesn't stand by the dossier. Raw intelligence 50-50 does not become the bulk of evidence to deny an American citizen, Carter Page, his constitutional rights and get a FISA warrant. Now, thankfully, Senator Lindsey Graham has now reopened the Senate investigation into FISA abuse, and we're also waiting for Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General's report on the same. And unlike the Democrats' never-ending witch hunt, this investigation centers around real crimes with real evidence. So what I'm telling you is it's all now beginning to cascade down. It's time to officially now pull the veil off the deep state effort. They tried to steal an election. They had a favored candidate, Hillary Clinton. They had somebody they didn't like, Donald Trump. And literally, they wanted to alter the will of the American people, both before the election and then undo the career of a duly elected president. This is abuse of power we have never, ever seen in the history of this country. We have a lot more coming up. Now, to turn to more breaking news tonight about another deep state bad actor. Now, do you remember when Congressman Adam Schiff made such a big deal when then House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes went over to the White House to review documents? Remember this? Take a look.
The chairman will need to decide whether he is the chairman of an independent investigation into conduct which includes allegations of potential coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians, or he is going to act as a surrogate of the White House because he cannot do both. And unfortunately, I think the actions of today throw great doubt into the ability of both the chairman and the committee to conduct the investigation the way it ought to be conducted.
Tonight, I'm calling for an investigation into Adam Schiff. He is in hot water after reportedly, get this, sending his staff to New York City to meet with Michael Cohen for over 10 hours. Remember, he testified only 7 hours prior to his hearings on Capitol Hill. 10 hours. Well, that kind of reminds me of the time Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac during the Department of Justice's investigation. They were about to rule on whether to indict Hillary or not. Remember, Cohen also testified that they went over and he reviewed topics with Schiff himself, something the congressman denied. Again, one is lying here. Which one? Take a look.
What did you talk to Mr. Schiff about?
I spoke to Mr. Schiff about topics that were going to be raised at the upcoming hearing.
The extent of my contact was just inviting him to testify and also trying to allay his concerns about the president's threats against him and his family.
Talk about topics? That's like a teacher giving you the questions to a test ahead of time. Staff 10 hours? Were they coaching? This now needs its own investigation. What he did with Michael Cohen would be called witness tampering, and it's not a first for Adam Schiff. In July of 2018, Congressman Schiff actually met with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson. He says accidentally. They just ran into each other in Aspen, Colorado, while Simpson was a key witness in an ongoing House collusion probe. Now, the pair denied talking about the investigation. They were just socializing. And let's not forget Ed Henry's reporting from 2017. According to Ed, during a closed-door confidential hearing with Donald Trump Jr., remember, Schiff was spotted going in and out of the hearing room over and over and over again, while at the very same time, fake news CNN was gaining access to what was going on in real time with Don Jr.'s testimony as it was happening. Care to explain that, Mr. Schiff? And who could ever forget the time that Schiff was caught on tape, yes, colluding with somebody that he thought was a Russian to get dirt on President Trump so it could impact America's electoral process. The thing that he says he's investigating, we got him on tape doing it. Listen.
What's the nature of the compromise?
Well, there were pictures of naked Trump.
And so Putin was made aware of the availability of the compromising material?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. We will be back in touch with you through our staff to make arrangements to obtain these materials for our committee and for the FBI, and I appreciate you reaching out to us.
Real collusion with Russia. Naked pictures of Donald Trump. I'll have more flexibility after the election. All right, given the serious conflicts of interest, now allegations of witness tampering, collusion, his constant lying, apparent leaking that needs to be investigated, well, Adam Schiff needs to hold himself to the same standard that he held to Devin Nunes, and that would be recuse himself from the Intel Committee's investigations immediately. There now needs to be an ethics investigation into Adam Schiff, and he needs to be held accountable. No wonder he doesn't want to come on the show. His actions over the past 2 years represent every single thing that is wrong with the sewer of Washington, D.C. These are now major developments, and remember, so much more to come in terms of other depositions, 302s, the FISA warrant, Gang of Eight. It's all coming out, and people will be held accountable. All right, we continue, by the way, our very important Hannity Watch on the rise of anti-Semitism and bigotry inside the Democratic Party. This has been a really revealing and despicable week. As we speak, an elected U.S. member of Congress is sitting on the all-powerful Foreign Affairs Committee, even after suggesting, quote, evil Jews were hypnotizing the world, that Jewish money is controlling our government, and that her colleagues have a dual loyalty to Israel, which is anti-Semitism and on the most vile level. This should shock the conscience and alarm every single American. Apparently not those in the Democratic Party. A group of outspoken radical socialists, they're now pulling the strings in the House of Representatives. There's Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman Tlaib, Congresswoman Omar. Apparently, they're in head of the entire Democratic Party, and Nancy Pelosi is just speaker in name only. The rest of the Democrats are either fear-mongering or in total agreement. They had an opportunity to condemn this hate, this bigotry, this anti-Semitism, and they didn't do it this week. Now, by the way, that's why Pelosi is once again making excuses for this bigoted, continued behavior of her colleagues. Watch this.
I don't think our colleague is anti-Semitic. I think she has a different experience in the use of words, doesn't understand that some of them are fraught with meaning that she didn't realize.
There's no shortage of prominent Democrats rushing to defend Omar, and as per usual, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez leading the way. Get this, she actually, who you just saw at the beginning of the montage, is fundraising off of Omar's anti-Semitism, begging for donations because pro-Israel groups are coming after her, Tlaib and Omar. The new narrative of the Democratic Party is anyone who calls out Congresswoman Omar's anti-Semitism is Islamophobic. It's a disaster. This is really now a issue this country has to deal with. What? You have that. We have, abortion after birth, during the birthing process, a party that leans so far left. Let's see, no planes, no cows, highest taxes ever, and, no cars, oil, or gas. President Obama's not liberal enough. Congresswoman Omar actually went after Obama today. Now, we have a big problem in this country. Let me get to our first guest. Joining us, Professor Alan Dershowitz of Harvard. You know, Professor, you and I have a common bond, a love of Israel. And what has now come out on multiple occasions should outrage every American. And the fact that the Democratic Party could not take a stand and name this woman and condemn this and keep her on the committee, to me, is outrageous.
I agree with you, and I think that these Democrats, the ones on the extreme left, are trying to turn the Democratic Party into Britain's Labour Party headed by an overt anti-Semite like Corbyn. Corbyn makes the same argument. So it wasn't anti-Semitic, it was just anti-Zionist. But what Omar said is clearly anti-Semitic, and she should have been condemned by name, singled out. Anti-Semitism should have been isolated as the real problem that we're confronting, not only in this country, but around the world. But the Democrats, by watering it down, it was as if, you know, after the black children were killed in Alabama back in the civil rights movement, and somebody wanted to introduce a resolution condemning attacks on black children, some Southerners said, oh, yeah, but let's also include attacks on white children. No, that's not the way you do it. You look at the problem. The problem is anti-Semitism coming from Omar and others like her. And that has to be condemned, and that has to be condemned uniquely and singularly and strongly.
I'm worried about the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. These insane white supremacist groups, they're rearing their ugly head. I don't care where it comes from. It needs to be confronted and stopped and called out. And I thought this was an act of cowardice this week. I really did. It was disgraceful.
Look, you know what else is an act of cowardice? Because Democrats and others and people on the left won't condemn Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter in their platform singles out one country, Israel, calls it genocidal, calls it apartheid. And look, I care about black lives. I've devoted my life to protecting black lives, but I will not support the organization Black Lives Matter because I have zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, zero tolerance for anti-Catholicism, zero tolerance for anti-Muslim, zero tolerance for any kind of bigotry. You cannot tolerate that.
That group has said, what do we want dead cops? What do we want them now? We have on tape, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I've got to move on, though. Let me ask you about Adam Schiff. And, Professor, this one bit of testimony of Bruce Orr is showing many lies and contradictions. This is just the beginning. We're going to see the FISA warrants. We're going to see the 302s. We're going to see the Gang of Eight information. And we're going to get all of these, all the testimony of all of these people. And what we're learning is...
We should see everything.
Okay, but what bothers me and all...
Transparency is the essence, yeah.
Yeah. We now know that many people here lied under oath. What do you think of Adam Schiff? What did you think of that tape with him thinking he's talking to a Russian? What do you think of his staff spending 10 hours with Michael Cohen?
Well, we now know that the allegations in the Steele dossier aren't even supported by Steele. I think that FISA court ought to consider holding in contempt of court, people who submitted the FISA application while withholding relevant information that might have led them to a different conclusion. Look, you know, we live in such a strange time. The other headline is Jesse Smolin's getting indicted. Thankfully, it's very important. Anybody who falsely accuses anybody should be called to task. I've been falsely accused. Fortunately, I was able to disprove the allegations. But the people who accused me should be prosecuted and should be investigated. Nobody should be able to make false accusations and get away with it.
I've lived with that my whole career, and the standard is so high, even you and an army of Alan Dershowitzes couldn't win a case. I am glad about these Covington kids, that you have a great lawyer in Linwood, and what happened in his case was a disgrace. All right, I want to remind everybody, you are going to write an introductory response to the Mueller report?
That's right.
And that will be coming out?
And it will be out just days after the Mueller report becomes public. I'm working with a very, very fast publisher, Skyhorse. They will be the first ones out with the report with my introduction.
All right, Professor, thank you for being with us tonight. All right, we continue our investigation into the deep state. A lot of news with this Bruce Orr testimony just released tonight. We'll check in with Ed Henry, John Solomon, Sarah Carter, and the congressman who with more details on whether or not Cohen was coached by Schiff's team, as Fox is reporting. And we have two villains of the day today. Two. Straight ahead. Surrounding Congressman Adam Schiff, possibly coaching Michael Cohen or his staff prior to his appearance before the House Oversight Committee, and also the release of the Bruce Orr interview. Fox News chief national correspondent, our own Ed Henry. Ed, this is the beginning of a cascade, because there are a ton of those interviews that I believe are going to now be released.
Well, Sean, it could be just the beginning, because Democrat Adam Schiff is on record refusing to even answer if he would accept Robert Mueller's conclusions if the Mueller report does not find Russian collusion. Instead, Schiff told CNN last month he's moving forward with his own House intel investigation so that the Russia probe will continue no matter what Mueller finds. So in case you're wondering if this will be a fair investigation of the president, Fox's Catherine Herridge has found out, as you noted, that Schiff's Democratic staff came here to New York 4 times to meet with former Trump attorney Michael Cohen for over 10 hours ahead of his 7 hours of public testimony. Republican Congressman Mike Turner told Fox this clearly shows to him the witness was coached inappropriately. Sources familiar with the Cohen meetings say that the House intel staffers covered such topics as whether the president inflated some of his assets to insurance companies and his close relationship with the head of the National Enquirer. That raises eyebrows about how that ties in to oversight of intelligence matters, which is what Schiff is supposed to be doing. In fact, those topics were among the ones that Cohen ended up discussing in his public testimony that went after the president. So it is sparking questions tonight about whether Cohen was coached. Now, Schiff's office insists to us nothing inappropriate happened. They tell us it's standard procedure to talk to witnesses about what they previously told Congress and to get a preview of what they may now say in public. But, Sean, it's interesting tonight. The president is tweeting, quoting out something else Congressman Turner said about how he believes the only time Michael Cohen told the truth was when he pled guilty to lying to Congress.
All right, unbelievable story as it continues to develop. Ed Henry with us tonight on this breaking news night. Now, earlier today, the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, had this to say about Michael Cohen's testimony last week. Take a look.
If they don't prosecute him, it would be a complete outrage after what they did to Flynn, a bunch of other people. His perjury is overwhelmingly proven. How about I didn't ask for a job, and I wouldn't have taken one? Put next to that a tape going back to that time with Chris Cuomo in which he says that he wants to be chief of staff to the President of the United States.
All right, here now with much more is Ohio Congressman Mike Turner. He is the lawmaker who sent a letter to Cohen's legal team asking for clarification about their meetings with Congressman Adam Schiff. Also with us, Executive Vice President at the Hill, John Solomon, Fox News investigative reporter Sarah Carter. Congressman, let me begin with you because first, the Bruce Orr issue, coupled with the Adam Schiff issue, we now know this is going to be a cascading, unstoppable event where we are now going to have access to all of these interviews and all of the contradictions that I pointed out. But more importantly, there is, you know, Adam Schiff, remember, he met with, he just ran into Fusion GPS's Glenn Simpson in Aspen. His staff, 10 hours. That's a problem. And remember what he did to Chairman Nunes. He had a fit over the whole issue that Nunes actually went to the White House and demanded recusal, et cetera, in an investigation. Tell us where you think this is going.
Well, Sean, this is absolutely shocking. I mean, when you look at the fact that we learned in the Government Oversight Committee that Cohen had conversation with Adam Schiff, and then we learned from Fox News reporting now and Lanny Davis reporting that 4 trips to New York, totaling over 10 hours of meetings. That's not just talking to someone about the logistics of their testimony. That's actually talking to them about their testimony. That's when coaching can happen. That's when suggesting of answers happens. This is certainly very concerning, and it shows orchestration. I mean, they say this is a professional investigation. This is professional orchestration. And when you look at the comparison between the amount of time the Democrats questioned him at oversight, it was probably maybe 4 hours of Democrat questioning that was public testimony, and over 10 hours in private preparation for that testimony. That certainly is not appropriate and is not professional.
Well, it's beyond inappropriate. Now, John Solomon, we now have obvious coaching. What else would they possibly be meeting for? And Cohen said, oh, we were going over the questions, his testimony. So we have coaching. We have literally Schiff's own collusion on tape as he thinks he's speaking with the Russian operatives, trying to get Russian compromised material on the president for electoral purposes. Then, of course, he hired the one guy in the country, the one guy that still believes in this debunked dossier, which its author doesn't even believe in. And we now know in the case, he's on tape colluding with Russians. What needs to happen, and how big is this, especially with the release of that Orr transcript?
I think, personally, the committee should demand of its chairman all of his contacts with witnesses, including witnesses who may have at some point stopped cooperating with the committee. I have some reason to believe that Chairman Schiff and his staff had contacts with people who subsequently stopped cooperating with the committee. I think that's an important question. If he believes in transparency, like he says, put all of your contacts down on the table. Let us know all the witnesses you've been talking to behind the scenes out of view. But, a week ago I said, Sean, I thought Michael Cohen's testimony would be a boon to the president. 10 days later, after he made it, here are the facts. We're not talking about what he said. We're talking about the lies. We're talking about prosecution now. We're talking about his lawyer who has a Russian client and representing him after representing Hillary Clinton. And The Hill did a poll. And listen to this poll. Back in December, when he pled guilty, Michael Cohen, 51% of Americans said they thought he was credible. After he testified last week, now only 37% of Americans think he's credible. The entire Cohen testimony has backfired on the Democrats.
All right, now, Sarah, let's go over this, because now I believe this will be the beginning of what will be a cascade of transcripts. But remember, we talked about 5 buckets. The 302s have yet to be released. They will be released. The actual FISA warrant, which we're told the bulk of information is the debunked dossier that Steele doesn't even stand by. Then the Gang of 8 material. What else do we expect is going to be coming, and how transformative to this entire story do you believe this will be?
Well, I think it's absolutely imperative that the president make these documents available to the American public and to Congress. Whether there's national security issues regarding some of the documentation, that can be taken care of before the release. But it has to be transparent. Sean, there's also another issue. I mean, we know that Adam Schiff, and I reported on this several weeks ago, has gone as far as hiring a National Security Council personnel that worked in the White House that had access to executive privilege documents onto his investigative staff. We need to know what's... It cannot stand, because there has to be a line that they cannot cross. And we know now that Cohen has lied over and over again. Sean, another thing that I think will be coming out is now with the release of all this testimony, we'll be seeing testimony from Loretta Lynch. We saw the testimony from Bruce Orr and the enormous contradictions. Look at Glenn Simpson, the enormous lies and contradictions between who's telling the truth, Bruce Orr, Glenn Simpson, about his meetings and his contacts with Christopher Steele when he spoke to the FBI. Rod Rosenstein, John wrote a great piece on that, and it's another contradiction as to who and when he knew about Nellie Orr. I mean, Rod Rosenstein told lawmakers, he basically said he wouldn't answer any of their questions as to when the Department of Justice knew when Nellie Orr was actually a conduit, her husband was a conduit for her information. And then later it's discovered in his own testimony that Rod Rosenstein was the man that he met with, was the man that he got the information from. So everyone here is lying.
It's 2 years this month that you and John started all this, and that we've been unpeeling every layer of the onion. You guys have done a great job. Other people as well. Congressman, welcome to the club. We're glad to have you as well. All right, when we come back, more breaking news. Shocking past statements by Joe Biden that could cost him the nomination for 2020. We're going to show them all to you coming up next. Later, Congresswoman Omar has the nerve to attack the late John McCain now in the midst of this anti-Semitism scandal. What does it tell you about her? But more importantly, what a week of exposure for the Democratic Party. Bigotry, anti-Semitism, they did nothing about it. Straight ahead.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Aisha Hasni. President Trump was in Alabama Friday to survey damage from Sunday's deadly tornado. The president, along with the First Lady, spent time in Beauregard, one of the hardest hit communities. They met with survivors and stopped at a memorial for the 23 people killed. The president has ordered FEMA to give Alabama, quote, the A+ treatment as it recovers. White House Communications Director Bill Shine is leaving his post. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says Shine gave the president his resignation on Thursday. He'll take on a new role as a member of the president's re-election campaign. Bill Shine served as a former co-president of Fox News before he joined the White House last June. I'm Aisha Hasni. Now back to Hannity.
All right, time for our mini monologue on the ghost of Joe Biden's past. Now, reports are surfacing that crazy Uncle Joe Biden will announce that he's running for president in 2020. Now, the former senator has a long political career behind him, which is now coming back to haunt him even before he officially declares his candidacy, which we hear might be in April. Now, in his time in the Senate, Biden made remarks, well, he should have been ashamed of at the time, particularly regarding race. Watch this impassioned speech that he delivered on the Senate floor. Now, this is regarding the 1994 crime bill. Take a look.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And, Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, Sebastian Gorka. Leslie, those statistics are all true. Biden and Obama failed, and I didn't even talk about Iran yet and the $150 billion they sent to the mullahs there.
First of all, the goal of the Democrats, despite our love of health care and immigration and issues like that, as you know, is to make Donald Trump a one-term president. So right now, most, not all, some are hung up on New Green Deal and infighting, which has to stop as a party.
You support what Joe Biden said?
But the bottom line...
Leslie, do you support what Joe Biden said?
I don't support what Joe Biden said, but I do think he is the candidate that can and will beat Donald Trump.
Okay. I understand you feel that way. You know, Dr. Gorka, 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty. I won't repeat it, but I got to tell you something. The most atrocious record of any president ever. The only one never to hit 3% GDP growth.
Yeah, Sean, Joe Biden is a testament to who the Democrats were and who the Democrats are. This is the party that wanted to stop integration. This is the party of Bull Connor. This is the party that led to the death of Abraham Lincoln. The KKK was not a Republican organization. Lincoln was a Republican. Joe Biden, you're absolutely right. That little clip you played, he's a good old boy. Isn't this the person who said famously about Barack Obama, he's the first clean, presentable African-American politician who speaks properly, articulate. This is the Democrat Party.
When we come back, unbelievable about Congresswoman Omar viciously going after Meghan McCain today, and we have not one, tonight, two villains of the day. Straight ahead.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Aisha Hasni. President Trump was in Alabama Friday to survey damage from Sunday's deadly tornado. The president, along with the First Lady, spent time in Beauregard, one of the hardest hit communities. They met with survivors and stopped at a memorial for the 23 people killed. The president has ordered FEMA to give Alabama, quote, the A+ treatment as it recovers. White House Communications Director Bill Shine is leaving his post. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says Shine gave the president his resignation on Thursday. He'll take on a new role as a member of the president's re-election campaign. Bill Shine served as a former co-president of Fox News before he joined the White House last June. I'm Aisha Hasni. Now back to Hannity.
All right, time for our mini monologue on the ghost of Joe Biden's past. Now, reports are surfacing that crazy Uncle Joe Biden will announce that he's running for president in 2020. Now, the former senator has a long political career behind him, which is now coming back to haunt him even before he officially declares his candidacy, which we hear might be in April. Now, in his time in the Senate, Biden made remarks, well, he should have been ashamed of at the time, particularly regarding race. Watch this impassioned speech that he delivered on the Senate floor. Now, this is regarding the 1994 crime bill. Take a look.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And, Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
Here was reaction. Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, Sebastian Gorka. Leslie, those statistics are all true. Biden and Obama failed, and I didn't even talk about Iran yet and the $150 billion they sent to the mullahs there.
First of all, the goal of the Democrats, despite our love of health care and immigration and issues like that, as you know, is to make Donald Trump a one-term president. So right now, most, not all, some are hung up on New Green Deal and infighting, which has to stop as a party.
You support what Joe Biden said?
The bottom line,
Leslie, do you support what Joe Biden said?
I don't support what Joe Biden said, but I do think he is the candidate that can and will beat Donald Trump.
Okay. I understand you feel that way. You know, Dr. Gorka, 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty. I won't repeat it, but I got to tell you something. The most atrocious record of any president ever. The only one never to hit 3% GDP growth.
Yeah, Sean, Joe Biden is a testament to who the Democrats were and who the Democrats are. This is the party that wanted to stop integration. This is the party of Bull Connor. This is the party that led to the death of Abraham Lincoln. The KKK was not a Republican organization. Lincoln was a Republican. Joe Biden, you're absolutely right. That little clip you played, he's a good old boy. Isn't this the person who said famously about Barack Obama, he's the first clean, presentable African-American politician who speaks properly, articulate. This is the Democrat Party.
When we come back, unbelievable about Congresswoman Omar viciously going after Meghan McCain today, and we have not one, tonight, two villains of the day. Straight ahead.